Hey, this is Denis Hare, and you're listening to Creech Questions.
Hey, it's Nico Martin Green. You are listening to the best podcast, Creech Questions.
Welcome back, everybody, to Creech Questions. We are on episode 41. As usual, in the background is Thelma and Louise with their theme song, East Virginia. You can check out more of their music at www.thelmalouise.ch. We are slowly and surely on the road to a new era in Creech Questions, and it starts today. Normally we do shoutouts at this point, but in lieu of that, we're going to discuss a little bit that you might have missed if you hadn't listened to our previous episode, which was recorded live on the way back from Walker Stalker Con Atlanta. Now, there's a lot of big things happening right now with Creech Questions. If you were listening to the intro, you might have heard that I didn't mention that it was brought to you in part by the Dead Connection. That is because Creech Questions and Creech Creative is no longer sponsored by the Dead Connection, and it's not anything bad. At this point in the road for us, we are slowly moving away from just Walking Dead stuff and starting to branch out into more general entertainment, as you can see by the guest we have on today. Of course, The Walking Dead is always going to be a huge part of this. We'll still bring the actors on, and we're also still going to do our Walking Dead wrap-up. But it's going to be less Walking Dead focused, and obviously, the Dead Connection is your connection to all things Walking Dead. So they are going to sponsor something that is more along the lines of what they are about in Walker Stalker Con. So we here thank them for their support for these past couple of months and look forward to what's next from them, as I'm sure they are looking forward to what's next for us. And that leads us to the next part. What is next for Creech Questions? We're 41 episodes. I'm so excited that in an episode from now is episode 42, obviously. But 10 after that, we hit our year mark. That's really exciting. We've been around for almost a year now. Most podcasts don't last over a year, even close to a year. So that means that it has a lot to do with the listeners and the interviews that we have been able to procure, that everybody is still listening and enjoying what we do, and thank you. Which leads us to our big announcements that we made on the podcast last week, if you've missed it. Dave Sheridan, who was a guest on Creech Questions very early on, star of Scary Movie, Walking Deceased, totally hilarious films. Well, he is going to be joining us in the near future as a co-host, as the main co-host. So, it's going to be a different vibe to it. He's a master at improv and comedy, so it's going to be a different kind of show. It's definitely going to be a very entertainment-based. I mean, not saying I'm not entertaining, but I can guarantee you Dave's definitely 10 times more funny and hilarious than I am. Plus, me added into it makes it even just a little bit more hilarious. But it's going to be a great time, and I hope you continue listening, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So, the other announcement I made last week was a guest announcement, and I announced that Seth Gilliam, who plays Father Gabriel on The Walking Dead, is going to be an upcoming guest on Creech Questions. So there is that to look forward to as well. I need you to submit me your questions if you want to ask him one. But please, no hate messages, because I will not pass those on. Now, I did get confirmation on another interview, actually right before recording this. However, I'm going to be puzzlingly cryptic on just who it is. However, I will say that my hint to you is this person has something to do with a previous podcast guest. They are connected to a previous podcast guest in some way, shape, or form. And that's all you get. Now, we've got 2 amazing interviews for you today. But before we go into that, let's go ahead and do our Walking Dead wrap-up.
And now 3 of us are gone.
Why'd you bring us here?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Walking Dead wrap-up. This is actually my second time recording this. A funny, not funny story today is, as I was mentioning, there's big changes for Creech Questions and Creech Creative, and one of the things is we've actually gotten new equipment. So we recorded the Walking Dead wrap-up with Alyssa, and it recorded everything that didn't deal with the episode we were talking about. It got us when we were first talking, before we got into the review, and then afterwards. I don't quite know how that happened, but we're going to figure that out today, right after I get off this and edit this together. So it'll be completely perfect for next week. In the meantime, however, you've got just me today, and we'll be going over what Alyssa thought as well. There was a lot of surprises this week. Everybody was surprised that they didn't reveal quite what happened to Glenn yet. However, I think the surprises that worked the best were the ones that had no base in the comic book. The pairing of Tara and Denis is actually really new and very awesome, I must say. I think while it seemed like they were hinting at Eugene and Denis just because of their awkwardness, I think, honestly, Tara is a better fit. And me and Alyssa both liked that scene that featured the kiss. We honestly liked most of the episode today. Once again, season 6, they are going out on all cylinders. And they have delivered amazing episode after amazing episode, to the point that it's seeming like it's just not going to stop. They're just going to continue delivering good episodes. However, I'll be the villain here. I do think the next week's episode isn't going to be that great, just because it looks like a Daryl-centric focused episode. But as Alyssa had said to me, that Sasha and Abraham's also in it, so hopefully they'll balance that out and not make it too Daryl focused, because I don't want to watch He-Man overcome the impossible odds that he always does. Once again, love Norman, hate Daryl. Kill Daryl already. Alright, the next thing that we talked about was the whole Jesse and Rick kiss, which was from the comics. Alexandra has been getting hate all over Twitter and Facebook. It's actually really ridiculous for kissing Rick. I figured people would be happy that Rick has now finally found somebody. I mean, especially after losing Lori so horribly. It's about time for Rick to have a little bit of happiness in his life, even if it does come at the hands of the ending of the hashtag Brecken Creech. I kid about that. No, seriously. Yeah, I think it's good, and it was handled perfectly. She had time to cope after the killing of Pete, and I really feel that this is going to be a good storyline. That's not going to end well. Obviously, love never does in The Walking Dead, but at least Rick will have somebody for short term. And the other thing we discussed was the whole scene with Ron and Rick. We don't quite know what's going on there, and I don't either, but I have a strong sneaking suspicion that Ron wants to learn how to use a gun for definitely nefarious reasons. He is not wanting to learn to help out, as he put it. I think he wants to use the gun to kill, or try to kill Carl, maybe scare Carl, try to force Rick and them out. I feel like not only is he the son of Porch Dick, I feel like he's also has some nefarious reasons for wanting to learn how to use a gun. Now, there was no Glenn, like we said earlier, in this episode, but there was a huge revelation pertaining to Glenn, in that him and Maggie are going to have a baby. Maggie finally revealed that she was pregnant, and the reason I say finally is because if you go back about 4 episodes on the podcast, when we reviewed the very first episode, me and Alyssa called it. We actually predicted that Maggie was pregnant just from the wording that she used when Glenn told her to stay there. And 4 episodes later, confirmation. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always awesome to get stuff right because with this show, it's so unpredictable. And almost 90% of the time, I am almost completely, horrifically wrong. Like, not even close to being anywhere correct. I predicted, if you remember listening to the Fear the Walking Dead wrap-up, I predicted deaths every week, and it never happened. And then the week I predict a death, nothing happens. Or I don't predict a death, something happens. So, it seems like Scott Gimple is now going to start messing with the comic readers a little bit. It looks like, well, one with Denis and Tara, but if you go back to last night's episode, there was that scene that Rosita was crying on top of the gate, and Spencer came up. And me and Alyssa were talking, and it definitely seems like it's such a random scene to have thrown in there for no reason. I feel like that's the beginning of some sort of relationship. Now, if you were a fan of the comics, if you remember the comics, Abraham actually cheated on Rosita with Holly. Now, Holly's dead. She died in episode 2. So they can't go that route. So I'm wondering if they're going to remix it, because Gimple's a master at remixing things and bringing them up later. I feel like Rosita may begin to have an affair with Spencer. And they're going to flip roles on that, whereas Abraham's getting cheated on instead of Abraham doing the cheating. Anything's possible. He could still technically, Francine's still alive, so he could technically still do that too, and they could just have it where both are doing it. I will have to say, the next part is a frustrating part, both for me and for Alyssa. Alyssa finally got to meet Jordan and Walker Stalker Con Atlanta. If you haven't seen the footage of Alyssa doing the interviews, you definitely should check that out. It's on our Facebook page, and it's also on, I believe, YouTube right now. But definitely check it out. Hey, we're going to be doing that at every Walker Stalker Con that we go to from here on out. But Alyssa got to meet Jordan and absolutely fell in love with him, as everybody does when they meet Jordan. Jordan's done a lot for me. Jordan is an amazing person, and I'd like to call him a legit friend. Hope he feels the same way about that. But if you don't know, Jordan Woods Robinson plays Eric. That's Aaron's boyfriend on The Walking Dead. And honestly, they haven't done much with the character. One of the biggest missteps with The Walking Dead so far, in me and Alyssa's opinion, is the mishandling, I guess you could say, of Aaron and Eric. They've been in for almost a full season at this point, seeing as they debuted in the second half. We're almost done with the first half of season 6. And yet, other than a couple of shots here and there, we haven't had any interactions with them as a couple, or even Eric pretty much at all. The last meaningful interaction they had together as a couple was, I believe, the second half, episode 13, around there, when they had Daryl over for spaghetti. And that was the last time that they had a meaningful interaction on the show. And we saw Eric a little bit in episode 2 as he was trying to help out any way he could by giving blood to Holly. And then we saw the side of Jordan's head for like 2 or 3 seconds last night with Aaron. And that was it. And, we are an AMC-approved podcast, but we also get to review and state our opinions on it. And we really feel like the show is dropping the ball right now with Aaron and Eric. And we're hoping that they do pick it up, because honestly, Aaron's already a fan favorite, and Jordan's a wonderful actor, and he has so much other stuff too, which may be a reason why. Speaking of, Jordan does have a new subscription service that is coming out tomorrow that you should definitely check out. If you listen to the podcast recently, he was on talking about it. It's only $5 a month to sign up for his membership. I mean, that's really not that much. That's like one pumpkin spice latte if you get it really big, or just a couple of less dollar menu items per month, and you can have professional help and consultation with musicians from around the world. I mean, for people like me who do this podcast and people who are creating short films, anything like that, I mean, this is a service that will legitimately help you out for only $5 a month. You can't really beat that. I mean, that's an amazing price. So definitely check them out on SOS Studio. Get the link to sign up. I think it's sosstudio.com/membership, if I remember correctly. But if not, just check Facebook, Jordan Woods Robinson. He'll have the link on there for sure. But I feel like they've been dropping the ball with his character and him and Aaron's relationship, to be honest. And we're hoping, because, I mean, there's not many relationships on The Walking Dead right now. I mean, as of right this moment, it seems like they're finally building up. I mean, for the longest time, it was just Glenn and Maggie. But now you have Glenn and Maggie, Jesse and Rick, Aaron and Eric, and possibly Denis and Tara. Now, we're hoping that Aaron and Eric don't take a backseat to all these other relationships, and we're hoping they step to the forefront. Because, much like Aaron's character has stepped up in this episode, we feel like their relationship can step up and they can be more part of the team. And we're hoping that they do that. Now, Deanna was going through a lot this episode, and it seemed to be she was suffering through some sort of dementia. I wouldn't even really say dementia, just, I guess, shock would be the better word. And she took out all of her frustration all over a walker in the chest. I mean, obviously she didn't kill it because Rick came and killed it, but she's not messing around anymore. And I think we're going to see a new side of Deanna that we've never seen before, and I'm actually really excited to see what's next for her, because she's grown, excuse my language, but she's grown a pair in today's episode, and, I mean, banging on, antagonizing a herd of walkers on the other side takes some guts, and she did it. Now, what we think is going to happen next week, other than boringness, is obviously Daryl, I'm assuming, gets captured because they showed it in the trailers. It's one of the only scenes we haven't seen yet. And Sasha and Abe get into some trouble too. I'm thinking this next episode is the last episode before we catch back up and reveal Glenn's fate, along with, it's probably the last flashback, or I guess flash sideways episode, just because of the fact that there's really no other people out there, so everybody else has made it back, so this is the last group to get back to Alexandria. Once they get back, I'm pretty sure everything's going to hit the fan, though, in true Walking Dead fashion. And I can't still, even though I'm kind of iffy on next week, I can't wait to see what happens next. 5 episodes in, they're going strong, they're killing it. I mean, amazing episodes that, if you look at every season, usually by this point you've had a dud episode, maybe a quote-unquote filler episode, but that's just not happening this season. Even their rest episodes, which every season has, especially after big moments, even their rest episodes are really good and packed with enough to keep you wanting more. I mean, there's been previous seasons of The Walking Dead where something big happens. In my case, I will say, when it was revealed that the governor was still alive in season 4? Yeah, in season 4. And then you had the 2 flashback governor episodes. Personally, in my opinion, I mean, I loved the source material from the Governor books by J. Bonansinga. However, I hated those 2 episodes. I felt they drug on, and they were slow, and they were boring, and I was just ready to see what was going to happen at the prison. This year, we have Glenn supposedly dying, and then you had a Morgan flashback episode, and then you found out what's been going on since the attack with JSS, and next week you're finding out what happened with Daryl and them leading all the walkers away, and then you're possibly finding out in the episode after that what happened to Glenn. But by this point, by the first Governor episode in season 4, I was like, oh my god, no more. This, I'm like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens, because I mean, it's still good. I've said it 50 million different ways on this episode review today. They are batting 100. They are knocking it out of the park. They are killing it every single episode. That we can't wait to see what happens next. Now, before we go, we're going to go talk really quickly about what people thought about the episode last night, and we'll discuss my opinions, and I'll interject if I remember what Alyssa had said. Now, Shannon Fletcher thought it was an awesome episode, and Alyssa agreed. She says if there was a way to capture her as a soundbite just saying, totally awesome, she would use it for every episode, because in all honesty, even though other people have episodes where like, that episode sucks, that episode's boring, that was a filler episode, Alyssa says she loves them all. She thinks every single episode is awesome. Christina Chavez says it was 8 out of 10, and she thought Last Sunday's was much better. I will agree the flashback episode was better. I mean, Gimple usually writes the best episodes, and the episodes that I get to watch live with the cast and Walking Dead fan base are always some of my favorites. So episode 4 is going to hold a special place in my heart. Bernadette Roya Brissette just commented with a heart emoji, so we are assuming that meant she loved it. Lori Sanchez says she thinks Deanna is next to go and that she is losing it, and it could very well happen. With the wall bleeding, it may not be as secure as everybody thought, and with Deanna acting the way she is, she may try to have the small dog syndrome and try to bite off more than she can chew. Lindsay Michelle Sweat says she rated it a 10, and she loved it. It did make her cry, though, for Maggie's pregnancy speech, and she was ecstatic and happy that Tara's got a girlfriend and Jesse kissing Rick. And lastly, we've got Michael Mayers. He says he loved this episode. Says Tara and that girl, who is Denis, kissed. Maggie is pregnant. And Jesse and Rick finally kissed. I've been waiting on that a very long time. This was a very intriguing episode, but he has to ask, what does that baby mean for the fate of Glenn? And me and Alyssa honestly don't think it means much for the fate of Glenn, because the baby is straight from the comics. And we are almost 100% certain that when a certain barbed wire bat carrying psychopath comes onto the show, Glenn's not going to be the victim. So I have a feeling that we are going to see the baby grow up with Glenn. And one of the other things that I interjected on our earlier recording before everything went crazy is that I love how this show sometimes builds and improves on stories from the comics so much more than the actual comics do. Because Lori died in the prison attack in the comics, but in the show, she died during pregnancy after the C-section, giving birth. And Maggie was there. So now we're looking at advancing 3 seasons, and now Maggie's pregnant. And I am 100% sure at some point she's going to remember back to that pregnancy and the drama that's going to create, thinking, what if that happens to me? It's going to be just, I am like flabbergasted at just the thought of it. I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing arc, and I'm really stoked to see it. So I guess that's going to wrap it up for the Walking Dead wrap-up. I'm going to leave you with a nice mental image. It hit me when I saw it and apparently somebody's already made a meme of it, but one of the things that got me the most on this episode was the very beginning, when it starts with Rick running away from the herd of walkers. Now, when I saw that scene, the only thing I could think of was Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest running down the beach with all the tribes people following him. Look it up. It's a funny scene, and I don't know why, it screamed Pirates of the Caribbean last night for me. But we will be back next week with complete, full audio, working audio. Once again, new era, new equipment. Got to iron out all the little hijinks, I guess you will, of this new technology. But we will have it in tip-top shape for you next week. And that's going to do it for the Walking Dead wrap-up. Welcome back. It is now the interview time. Our first interview today is with Mr. Denis O'Hare, who you know as Liz Taylor on the current season of American Horror Story Hotel. He's been in other seasons. He was Russell Edgington in True Blood. Absolutely loved his character in True Blood. I was mad at the way they killed him off. Now, we got to talk to him during our time at Walker Stalker Con Atlanta. Now, this was during a training day. So what happened was I let our camera guy, David, do interviews all that day to get him ready to be able to do interviews and get him trained on it. So David Davidson, our trusty camera guy who you've heard only on the Walker Stalker Con There and Back Again podcasts, he did this interview with Denis. I was actually behind the camera recording. It's a great interview. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome back, guys. My name's David Davidson. This is Denis O'Hare.
How are you?
Denis, can you tell us a little bit about working on True Blood?
It was awesome. It was a really great show. I came in season 3, and I didn't really know how long I was going to last, and I thought maybe I would die. It told me you're probably going to die because you'll probably come back from the dead. Didn't know when, but they had a feeling. And it was just a laugh riot. I mean, it was a great cast. It's a great show. It was one of my favorite jobs ever.
Do you have a favorite moment you want to talk about?
You know, for me, it won't be one that many people know. It was a moment when I was smoking cigars with Bill's character. And it was a moment when I realized that Russell was illiterate and that he actually couldn't read words. But he could read other things. He could read smoke. He could read people's intentions. He could read the blood in their eyes. He could read, blood beneath their veins. And that's how he read. And it was kind of a revelation for me about who the character was. And it was really, really fun. And again, it's something not many people know, but it was a great scene.
Do you have any funny stories from working on the set of True Blood?
Oh my God. I'm trying to think. Oddly enough, not a lot of funny stories. It was a pretty intense set. I mean, we definitely had fun as a cast, but there's a lot of fire, there's a lot of blood, people were dying all the time, we were riding horses, we had real wolves around, so it was a fairly, serious set. I'm trying to think. It was
no
pranksters
serious. At all.
No pranksters. One thing, there was a dead frog that somebody had run over, and it was a frog that was encased in plastic, and if your cell phone went off on the set during a take, you had to wear the frog of shame. And I had to wear the frog of shame one day, and I hated that.
Moving on, which of the American Horror Story series, which of the American Horror Story seasons is your favorite?
It's hard to say. I love Coven because I love my character in Coven. I love Spaulding. But I also love Murder House because Larry was such a great character, and he was so, I don't know, he was a weird combination of being innocent and evil.
Completely.
Which I loved, and funny. But I'm also loving this season with Liz Taylor on Hotel. It's a very unusual character, and she's incredibly powerful. And I love playing that power.
Speaking of Liz Taylor, can you tell me a little bit about what it's like playing that character, or maybe a little bit of backstory about Liz Taylor?
Well, her backstory is coming up this week on TV. I don't want to blow it too much, but she obviously was, she had a family. She had a family, and at one point that she abandoned that because she was in pursuit of her identity. And she's a person with a lot of pain in her background, and in this season she actually ends up going through a lot of pain.
Are you excited about the way everything's gonna roll out?
I don't even know.
You don't even know.
No, we're shooting episode 9 right now out of 12. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I'm like totally in the dark.
It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you,
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Welcome back. Now it's time for the main event. Now, I have to say, I've been a fan of Robert Englund since I was a kid. Occasionally, you'll get that guest that is just... You have to almost shake your head in disbelief. Like, did I just interview Robert Englund? And I actually was pretty shocked afterwards. David actually caught it on film. I have been, like I said, a fan of Robert Englund's for a long time. Was huge into Freddy, especially in my teenage years. I remember seeing Freddy vs. Jason in the theater. I was so obsessed over that movie. And I had all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets on videotape, and then I got them on DVD, and then I bought the collection on Blu-ray. My sister was an even bigger fan when she was little. My dad loves telling the story that most girls in the early 90s had pictures of New Kids on the Block or posters of Macaulay Culkin, you know, the heartthrobs of that age on their wall. And my sister didn't have any of that. She had a Freddy Krueger poster. She wanted to marry Freddy Krueger. So she was equally envious of me to get this interview. And he was the nicest person I've ever gotten a chance to interact with. And I really hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did actually conducting it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Creech Questions. I am here with the man of everybody's dreams, Robert Englund. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm pretty good. I think I kissed too many babies yesterday dressed like Freddy. I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, but other than that, I'm having a great time.
Awesome. Now, you've been in countless movies. I mean, obviously everybody remembers you as Freddy. What was your favorite non-Freddy role of your career?
Well, I had a great early location experience in the 1970s on a film called Stay Hungry, directed by the great Bob Rafelson, who did 5 Easy Pieces, the movie that introduced Jack Nicholson to everybody. And I starred with Jeff Bridges and Sally Field, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Joanna Cassidy from Blade Runner, and Scatman Crothers from The Shining, and we actually shared a motel room. So I was gone for about 3 months on that movie, and I learned a lot, and I watched a lot, I observed, I partied a lot, but it was a great, wonderful sort of 70s Renaissance Hollywood experience for me. It was part of the sort of golden era of 70s filmmaking, and I got to be part of it, and that was a great experience. But part 7, Nightmare 7, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, that was also great because most of us were successful by then, and we had some money in the bank, or had bought a house or a new car or had a baby, and I remember having lots and lots of lunches with John Saxon. And John told me a lot of old Hollywood lore. He told me stories about Audrey Hepburn and Burt Lancaster and Robert Redford and Marlon Brando. He worked with John Huston, Quentin Tarantino, Bruce Lee, Freddy Krueger, yours truly. But yeah, that was a great experience also. We'd all realized we were part of something, a very successful franchise at that time, obviously, and it was great to get that kind of oral tradition, gossip from John Saxon, because now I can pass some of that on, and to the fans and to other actors.
All right, and you've been in 8 Nightmare movies, including Freddy vs. Jason. Is there any funny stories from behind the scenes?
Well, I poked myself with the hero glove, the real glove, on part 5. That was no fun. It's not a fun story, but that's a true story. We went out in the makeup once, trolling Sunset Boulevard, where the prostitutes linger, during the filming of part 1, and we had a limousine, and I was in the full makeup, and we teased some of the working girls, asking them if they wanted to jump in the back seat and do Freddy.
Well, I feel like we can't top that one. So I do want to thank you again for joining us for a couple quick questions. And is there anything you'd like to promote before we end the interview?
Sure, I'm quite busy now. In fact, I just got 2 jobs offered to me before I left for Walker Stalker. I have a film out right now on DVD and Netflix called The Last Showing that I'm particularly proud of, called The Last Showing. And I star with Finn Jones from the Game of Thrones. And I play the old projectionist who's been let go, and he volunteers to work in the snack bar, shoveling popcorn for the midnight screenings, and he has his revenge. And I'm really proud of that. Fear Clinic's out now, the horror movie Fear Clinic, with Brad Dourif's lovely daughter Fiona and myself. And I'm off to do a horror movie in Bulgaria called Fade. That title might change, with Ben Cross. And I'm off to do, in Ohio in December, I think I'm going to be doing a horror movie called Possessions with the great Anne Heche and Thomas Jane. And I'm really looking forward to that, too.
All right, well, make sure you check out those films and keep on following us on our channels. Welcome back, guys. That is going to conclude today's podcast. Next week, we are going to air our interview with Sean Clark. It was another amazing interview, and is also the first interview we did that had a live fan question on it. So you're definitely going to want to come back and listen to it. Sean had great answers, and he gave some great stories and information, and you're definitely going to want to listen to it. Well, I hope you enjoyed. We had a great episode, some great interviews, and we'll see you next week on Creech Questions.
Hey y'all, this is Lou Temple. Greg Nicotero.
Patty Miller.
T-Love.
Sarah Jensen.
Emma Bell.
Ming Chen. Vincent M. Ward.
Jeff Cobra.
Jose Pablo Cantillo. Danny Robot. Lawrence Gilliard Jr. Lester Carbonell. Harold Perrineau. Daniel Thomas May. Ellen Moss.
Sarah Wayne Callies.
Chad L. Coleman.
I'm RJ Babe from Breaking Bad. Bates Gonzalez.
AMC's Comic Book Man.
The Walking Dead, and you're listening to Creech.
Creech.
Creech Questions.
You better listen up good or I'm coming get you.
Hey everyone out there, this is CJ Creech, and you too can listen to our celebrity interviews on our podcast, Creech Questions. Check us out on CreechCreativeProductions.com and Facebook.com/CreechCreativeProductions.